Welcome back to the deep end. Today, we are taking a torch to one of the most persistent, and I would say expensive and frustrating illusions in the human experience.
That's a big claim to start with.
Well, it's a topic that affects every single decision you make. I mean, from what you eat for lunch to the car you drive to, and this is the big one, who you eventually decide to marry.
Right. We're talking about the future.
Exactly. We're talking about the future, but specifically, we're talking about why you and I, and pretty much everyone we know, are so spectacularly bad at predicting how we're going to feel when we actually get there.
It's a fascinating area of study. And, to be clear, we aren't talking about crystal balls or guessing where the stock market is going next week.
No, this is much more fundamental.
It is. We're talking about the basic machinery of the human mind. We're looking at why the things we think will ruin our lives usually don't, and why the things we think will save us, well, they rarely do.
We're doing a deep dive today into what's called effective forecasting. That's the technical term for it, right?
That's the one. It's the study of how we predict our future emotional states, our effects.
Basically, it's the science of why you think moving to California or, I don't know, buying that new Tesla or finally getting that ring on your finger is going to be the key to eternal bliss.
And why, statistically speaking, you are almost certainly wrong.
There you go.
It does sound a bit pessimistic when you put it like that.
It does. It sounds very cynical.
But the source material we're working with today is actually quite liberating. I mean, we're drawing from extensive data, like the German socioeconomic panel, and research from Nobel Prize-winning behavioral economists.
So this isn't just theory. This is hard data.
Hard data. And what it suggests is that we are, in a sense, chasing the wrong things because our brains are using a faulty map.
A faulty map is a very polite way to put it. I'd say our brains are actively lying to us.
Well, they're taking shortcuts.
To kick this off, I want to look at a very specific visual from the research stack. It's labeled in our notes as Figure 16. It is a graph, and it tracks life satisfaction.
Ah, yes. The marriage graph. This is one of the most famous, or maybe infamous, visuals in this entire field of psychology.
This thing is just, it's brutal. So for everyone listening, I want you to visualize a line graph. The vertical axis is life satisfaction on a scale of roughly 1 to 10.
A standard measure in these kinds of studies.
And the horizontal axis is time, years of your life. And right there in the middle, you have year 0. That is the year you get married.
And it's important to note, this is longitudinal data. This is crucial. They track the exact same people over a long, long period.
Right, so this isn't just asking random married people how they feel.
No, it's watching a life unfold in data points.
Yeah.
They're tracking the same individuals before, during, and after the event.
So you look at the line, say, 4 years before the wedding. It's pretty flat. People are just, living their lives.
Their baseline happiness, so to speak.
As you approach year 0, that line starts to creep up. The anticipation builds, the engagement, the planning.
The excitement, you can see it in the data.
And it peaks. It peaks right at the wedding. That is the highest point of reported happiness on the whole chart. And then, expert, walk us through what the source calls the startling news of Figure 16.
Well, this is the part that when you show this slide in a lecture hall, it always gets this wave of nervous laughter.
I can imagine.
Immediately after that wedding year, the line just drops. And it doesn't just dip a little bit. It's not a gentle return to earth. It goes into a steep, steady decline.
A nosedive.
A complete nosedive.
Yeah.
And within just a few years, it heads right back down to exactly where it was 4 or 5 years before the wedding ever happened.
Back to baseline. It is like the marriage never happened, statistically speaking, from a life satisfaction point of view.
In terms of that reported number, yes. The happily ever after bump is incredibly, incredibly short-lived.
So this is the big mystery we need to solve today. Because when you look at that graph, the cynical takeaway is just, well, marriage is a trap. You get bored of each other. Love dies. It feels very grim.
That's the immediate sort of System 1 conclusion you jump to.
Yeah. But the research suggests that isn't what's actually happening, is it? There's something else going on.
No, that's what we could call the adaptation theory, the idea that we just get used to the new spouse, right? Like you get used to a new couch or a new car. The novelty wears off.
And that's part of it, I'm sure.
It's definitely part of it. Hedonic adaptation is a real thing. But the source material points to something much more subtle, much more deceptive happening in the brain. It introduces this concept of a heuristic of judgment.
Okay, heuristic. Let's pause there and really unpack that for anyone who isn't a psychologist.
A heuristic is, in the simplest terms, a mental shortcut.
Like a rule of thumb.
Exactly. Your brain is, for lack of a better word, lazy. Or perhaps we should say it's efficient. It's constantly trying to save energy.
Mm.
Doesn't want to do hard, complex math if it can find a quicker way to a good enough answer.
So when I ask you a question like, how satisfied are you with your life? That sounds simple on the surface, but it's actually a computational nightmare for the brain.
It's an absolute nightmare. Think about what that question is actually demanding of you. To answer it honestly and accurately, you would have to audit your entire existence.
Everything.
Everything. You'd have to weigh your career, your health, your finances, your relationship with your parents, your childhood dreams versus your current reality, the state of the world. I mean, the list is endless. It is a massive, massive calculation.
And system one, that's the fast, automatic, intuitive part of your brain we've talked about before. It just can't do that.
It short circuits. It's too much data to process, so it cheats.
How does it cheat?
It substitutes the hard question for an easier one. This is a key concept. Instead of answering, how is my life in its totality going, it silently answers a different question, like, what is my mood right now? Or what is the biggest, most significant thing that has happened to me lately?
And this is what the source calls the substitution trap.
Precisely. So let's go back to our newlyweds. If I ask a groom 6 months after his wedding, how is your life? His brain isn't going to run that full, complex audit. It immediately latches onto the biggest, most salient, most recent major event in his world.
I just got married.
Exactly. That's the answer. So he reports a 9 out of 10. But he isn't really rating his life. He is, in a way, rating the wedding and the honeymoon phase.
Okay, that makes sense for the peak. But what about the crash? Why does it fall so fast?
Well, fast forward 3 years, he's still married. He might still love his wife very much. Their relationship could be great. But the marriage is no longer news.
It's not the headline anymore.
It's part of the furniture. It's the background context of his life, not the foreground event. So when you ask him, how is your life? His brain doesn't scream marriage anymore. It looks for something else that's salient right now.
Like, oh, my boss was a jerk today, or my car has a flat tire.
Exactly. And so the score drops. Not because the marriage got worse, but because the marriage stopped being the primary lens, the heuristic, through which he views and answers that question about his entire life.
The salience fades.
The salience fades. The marriage recedes from attention. And this brings us right to the core thesis of this entire deep dive. Attention is the currency of happiness.
That's a huge claim. Say that again.
Attention is the currency of happiness. If you aren't paying attention to something, it effectively doesn't count toward your life satisfaction score when you're asked.
It's like the tree falling in the forest. If you're happily married, but you're not thinking about being happily married, does it make you happy?
In that moment of being surveyed, maybe not. And the researchers have these just brilliant ways to prove how ridiculously fickle this satisfaction score really is. We have to talk about the coin on the machine experiment.
This one is amazing. This is Norbert Schwartz, right?
Yes, this is a classic in the field. So Schwartz invites subjects into a lab. He tells them they're going to fill out this deep, meaningful questionnaire about their overall life satisfaction. Very serious stuff.
Okay.
But before they get the questionnaire, he asks them to do a quick, unrelated favor. Just, hey, could you go photocopy this sheet of paper for me down the hall?
Seems totally random. Just a mundane task to get them settled in.
It seems that way. But for half the subjects, the experimental group, he planted a dime, just 10 cents on the photocopier for them to find.
A tiny, insignificant stroke of good luck. I mean, even when the study was done, a dime wasn't life-changing money.
Not at all. It's a microdose of dopamine. A little jolt of, hey, lucky day. So they find the dime, they pocket it, they feel slightly good for a second, and then they go back and fill out the serious survey about their entire life.
And the result?
The people who found the dime reported a marked improvement in their satisfaction with their life as a whole.
That is actually terrifying.
It is, isn't it?
You are telling me that finding 10 cents, which today is not even enough to buy a single gumball-made people, feel that their entire existence, their years of struggle and triumph and love and loss, were significantly better.
It demonstrates that what we call global life satisfaction is not a stable, deep-seated audit of your soul.
No.
It's a mood heuristic. The dime put them in a slightly better mood for a few minutes. Their brain then substituted the answer to, how do I feel right now, for the answer to, how is my life overall?
So if a dime can hack our happiness score that easily, imagine what a bad traffic jam does on the way to the survey.
Or a cloudy day. Or a rude email from your boss 5 minutes before.
Or, on the flip side, getting married a month before.
Exactly. The source material argues that figure 16, that dramatic marriage graph, is really just a graph of salience. It measures how likely people are to think about their marriage when asked about their life. For the first year or two, it's very likely. After that, not so much.
But I want to push back on this a little bit. I have to. Because it feels like we're dismissing the actual lived experience of marriage. Surely being married changes your life in real, tangible ways, not just in how you answer a survey question.
You're absolutely right to push back on that. And this leads to a really critical distinction the researchers make. It's the difference between life satisfaction and experienced well-being.
Okay, break that down for us, because on the surface, those two things sound identical.
They're very different. Life satisfaction is the story you tell yourself when you step back and think about your life. It's the survey answer. It's your remembering self-talking.
The highlight reel, the biography.
Precisely. Experienced well-being, on the other hand, is how you actually feel moment to moment as you live your life. It's the data from your experiencing self on a random Tuesday morning.
Okay, so life satisfaction is the thought, I am a happily married man.
Right.
Experience well-being is the feeling, I am currently arguing about whose turn it is to empty the dishwasher.
Exactly. And the data on this is fascinating, particularly for women, as the source points out. The research showed that marriage, just on a logistical level, drastically changes the structure of the day.
How so?
For example, women who live with a mate spend less time alone and much less time with friends.
And spending time with friends is usually a huge source of moment-to-moment happiness for most people.
It's a very high dopamine activity, yes. But on the flip side, married women spend more time making love, which ranks very, very high on the happiness scale. But they also spend significantly more time doing housework, preparing food, and caring for children.
Which, let's be honest, those activities tend to rank pretty low on the fun scale for most people.
They are relatively unpopular activities, as the researchers politely phrase it.
That's a very diplomatic way to put it.
So if you do the math, what happens? You lose some high-fun time with friends, you gain some high-fun intimacy, but you also gain a lot of low-fun drudgery.
So it's a wash. The average might not move much.
Often, yes. The new positives and the new negatives can essentially cancel each other out. So even if the story of the marriage is happy, I love my husband, we're building a wonderful life, the average experienced well-being, the moment-to-moment feeling, might not change much at all from when she was single.
So we have this profound disconnect. Our story self, our remembering self, thinks the marriage changed everything. It's a huge plot point.
The central plot point.
But our experiencing self is just doing laundry, but now with company.
A brilliant way to put it.
Yeah.
And this exact disconnect creates what the source calls the focusing illusion. This is the big overarching concept that explains why I still sometimes fantasize about moving to a cabin in the woods, or why you, or anyone listening, probably fantasizes about moving to California.
The California delusion, this was my favorite part of the reading, and it starts with a classic domestic dispute, doesn't it?
It does. The author, one of the researchers, tells a personal story about arguing with his wife. They were living on the East Coast, dealing with the slush and the snow and the gray skies of winter.
I know that feeling well.
And his wife was convinced that people in California are just happier. It seemed self-evident to her.
It's a very logical assumption. Sunshine, the ocean, mild winters. I mean, who wouldn't be happier? I look at my weather app in the middle of February, and I am ready to pack my bags and move to San Diego.
That was her argument exactly. But the author, being a behavioral scientist, argued that no, climate is not actually a major determinant of well-being in the long run.
What was his evidence for that?
He pointed out that people in Scandinavian countries, where it's dark and freezing for half the year, are consistently ranked as some of the happiest people on Earth.
Right, so it can't just be about the weather.
It can't be.
Yeah.
So he didn't just lecture his wife on statistics. He and his colleague, David Schade, actually got funding to settle the bet.
They did a whole research project to resolve a marital disagreement. I love that.
They did. They surveyed large groups of college students. Some were in California, at UCLA and UC Irvine, and the others were in the Midwest, at the University of Michigan, Ohio State.
The ultimate showdown. The shivering Midwest versus the sunny West Coast.
And they asked two main types of questions. First, a direct question. How satisfied are you with your life?
Okay.
And second, a predictive question. How satisfied do you think someone like you, but living in the other region, would be?
Ah, so they're measuring both reality and perception. I can guess the perception part. Everyone thought the Californians would be winning.
Overwhelmingly. Both the shivering Midwesterners and the sunny Californians themselves believe that life in California was definitively better.
And the reality, the actual life satisfaction scores.
Zero difference.
Come on, you mean none. None. Not even a little bit.
No statistically significant difference in the reported life satisfaction of students in California versus the students in the Midwest.
That just, it blows my mind.
And to be clear, the Californians did love their climate. When asked specifically about the weather, they were thrilled with it. And the Midwesterners despised their climate. They were not lying about that.
So the inputs were real. They loved the sun. They hated the snow.
Exactly. But when you added everything up, school, friends, stress, romance, money worries, all of it, the climate just didn't matter enough to shift the overall happiness score.
How is that possible? How can you love your weather every day and yet be no happier than the guy who's freezing in Ohio?
It brings us back to the core quote of this entire deep dive. And if listeners take away just one sentence, it should be this one. Nothing in life is as important as you think it is when you are thinking about it.
Let's just let that sit for a second. And nothing in life is as important as you think it is when you were thinking about it.
It's the absolute essence of what Daniel Kahneman calls WISIAD, which stands for what you see is all there is.
Explain that.
When you, sitting here right now, imagine living in California, what do you see in your mind's eye?
I see the highlight reel. I see myself hiking in the Santa Monica Mountains on a sunny day. I see myself drinking coffee on a beautiful patio. I see the ocean.
Exactly. You are focusing on the differences. You're focusing on the climate because that is what distinguishes California from where you are now.
And I'm ignoring all the similarities.
You are ignoring the hours of traffic on the 405. You are ignoring the exorbitant cost of living. You are ignoring the fact that you still have to do your taxes, you still have to argue with your boss, you still have to take out the trash, you still get sick.
I'm editing the movie of my life to only include the good scenes.
And for a long-term resident of California, someone who's lived there for 10 years, the climate becomes, as the source puts it, like having 10 toes.
10 toes? That's a strange analogy.
Bear with me. It is objectively very nice to have 10 toes. If I threatened to cut one off, you would be miserable.
Absolutely.
But do you walk around all day, every day, thinking, oh my God, look at my amazing 10 toes. I am so happy to have all these toes.
I can honestly say I've never once had that thought.
Because they're always there.
Yeah.
You adapt to them, you take them for granted. The climate, for a long-term resident, becomes background. It withdraws from your active attention. But when you are thinking about moving, you focus on it exclusively.
So I give it 100% of the weight in my decision when, in reality, it will only make up, what, maybe 2% of my actual lived experience day to day?
That is the focusing illusion in a nutshell.
But wait a minute. The text mentions a twist. It talks about the enterprising soul, the guy from Ohio who actually packs up and makes the move to California. Does he get a happiness boost?
Here's the fascinating part. If that guy moves, he will report being happier. At least for a while.
Why? Is it just because he wants to justify his decision, like a cognitive dissonance thing?
That's part of it, for sure, but it's more mechanical than that. It's because the very act of moving forces him to pay attention to the weather again.
Ah, it makes the comparison salient.
Exactly. Every time he walks outside in January and it's 70 degrees, he consciously notices. He thinks, wow, this is so much better than the blizzard back in Ohio. The contrast is fresh in his mind. So the illusion becomes self-fulfilling, but only for as long as his attention is actively focused on it.
But eventually.
Eventually, the 10 toes effect kicks in. The attention withdraws. He stops comparing his life to Ohio every day. California becomes his new normal. And he's just another person stuck in traffic who happens to have a nice tan.
This idea that attention is the real currency of happiness. It really explains why we are so bad at spending money to make ourselves happy. The source introduces this term, miswanting.
Yes, a term coined by the psychologists Daniel Gilbert and Timothy Wilson. Miswanting is basically the act of making bad choices because of errors in effective forecasting. We want things that we mistakenly believe will make us happy, and we're wrong because we don't understand how our own attention works.
There is a fantastic thought experiment in the source material about this. Let's play it out for the listeners. You've come into some money, and you have a choice between two purchases.
Okay.
Choice A. You buy a beautiful, comfortable, brand new car. Let's say it's a new BMW. Choice B. You join a group or a club that meets every week, say a poker club or a book club or a hiking group.
Which one do you choose for maximum long-term happiness?
My gut instinct, my system one brain screams, the car.
Why?
Because it's a tangible asset. It's a permanent thing. It costs, what, $60,000? I'll use it every single day. The club just feels ephemeral. It feels like nothing, just hanging out.
And that is the trap. The vast majority of people intuitively favor the permanent, expensive asset. But the research suggests the club is by far the better investment for your actual lived well-being.
So why? Is it just the generic advice that people need people and social connection is good?
It's more mechanical than that. It's about a concept called duration neglect and, again, the nature of attention. Let's think about the car. You buy it. For
Mm.
the first 2 weeks, it's amazing. You're showing it off. You're enjoying the new car smell. You're paying attention to it.
Right, it's the focus of my attention.
But after a few months, when you're driving to work in that same BMW, what are you actually thinking about?
I'm thinking about the meeting I'm late for, or I'm listening to this deep dive, or I'm worrying about what to make for dinner.
Exactly. You are not thinking about the buttery leather seats or the fine-tuned suspension. You are on autopilot. The car creates no new stream of positive experiences. It is a static object that fades into the background. You adapt to it completely.
It becomes invisible.
But the club, the book club or the poker night,
You have to be engaged.
social interaction demands your attention. You cannot do it on autopilot. If you're playing poker, you have to watch the cards, read the other players. If you're debating a book, you have to listen to their arguments and formulate your own response. You have to navigate the social dynamics.
You have to be present. You have to be in the moment.
Correct. It forces a continuous flow of new experience. You don't adapt to it in the same way because every meeting is different, the conversation is different, the game is different. So over the long term, the cumulative happiness from those weekly bursts of focused, positive attention far outweighs the fading idea of owning a nice car.
That is such a powerful heuristic for making decisions, not just about money, but about time. We could call it the attention audit.
I like that.
Before you commit to something, ask yourself, will this purchase or activity demand my active attention in a positive way, or will it just sit there and become part of the scenery?
That's it exactly.
Yeah.
Tennis lessons, learning to play the cello, weekly social gatherings, these are attention demanding. Big houses, fancy cars, expensive furniture, these are attention passive. And we consistently overvalue the passive stuff because it looks impressive when we think about it, but it delivers very little actual experience well-being.
There's a great quote about this in the source. Time is neglected. We plan for the highlight reel, for the remembering self, but we actually have to live through all the boring parts in between.
Speaking of neglecting time and misjudging experiences, there is perhaps no starker example of the focusing illusion than what the source calls the paraplegic paradox.
Yeah, this is a heavy one, but it's absolutely crucial to understanding the core argument. The source poses a very provocative question. It asks you to estimate what proportion of the day do paraplegics spend in a bad mood.
Now, if you ask the average listener, someone who is not a paraplegic and doesn't know one personally, what do you think they'd say?
My immediate unthinking guess would be a very high percentage. Maybe 70, 80%. I mean, it's a devastating, life-altering event. You lose your mobility. It feels like a tragedy that would color every single waking moment of your life.
That's the common intuition. But again, that intuition is a product of the focusing illusion. When I ask you that question, what do you immediately picture?
I picture the disability.
You picture a paraplegic thinking about being a paraplegic. You imagine the moment of the accident or the daily frustration of not being able to walk up a flight of stairs.
Right. I am focusing on the deficit. I am focusing on what is missing from their life, not what's still there.
But the reality, as the research shows, is that for most of the day, paraplegia is a part-time state.
That phrase sounds almost offensive. How can a permanent physical condition be part-time?
It means that the state of thinking about being a paraplegic is part-time. For a person with paraplegia, life goes on. They work, they read the newspaper, they get angry at politics, they joke with friends, they enjoy a good meal. And when they're doing those things, their attention is on the activity, not on their legs.
They aren't sitting there every second of every day just repeating the thought, I can't walk, I can't walk.
Exactly. Now, we have to be very clear about an exception the source makes. This does not apply to conditions that biologically demand attention, like chronic pain or constant loud noise or severe depression.
Things you can't ignore.
Things your nervous system will not let you ignore.
Yeah.
But assuming that you're not in chronic pain, the condition itself recedes into the background. It becomes the context for life, not the constant subject of it.
And there was a specific study on this by a researcher named Cohn that really drove this point home. She compared the perceptions of people who knew paraplegics personally to people who didn't.
Yes. She asked both groups to estimate the percentage of time a paraplegic would be in a bad mood at two different points in time. 1 month after the accident and 1 year after the accident.
What about the 1 month mark?
At the 1 month mark, both groups pretty much agreed. They thought the mood would be terrible. And they're right in the immediate aftermath of a tragedy, your attention is fixed on the loss. You can think of little else.
But the 1 year mark is where their predictions diverge dramatically.
A huge divergence.
Yeah.
The people who did not know a paraplegic estimated that even a full year later, they would be in a bad mood 68% of the time. They assumed the misery was a permanent, all-encompassing state.
Wow. And the people who did know a paraplegic personally?
They estimated only 41%.
That's a massive gap. That's the difference between imagining a miserable life and imagining a relatively normal one with some bad moments.
It is, because the people who knew a paraplegic had seen the withdrawal of attention with their own eyes. They'd seen their friend eventually start laughing at jokes again, start getting back to work, start planning for the future. They saw the process of adaptation. The outsiders couldn't simulate that. Their minds got stuck on the initial tragedy.
It's actually quite an optimistic finding, in a way. It suggests we are far more resilient than we give ourselves credit for, primarily because our brains eventually get bored of even the biggest tragedies in our lives. We just stop paying constant attention to them.
We do. But, and this is a very important but, there's a catch. And this is where we have to talk about what the source calls the colostomy patient contrast, because this reveals a deep, deep conflict between our two selves.
The experiencing self versus the remembering self again.
Correct. So studies show that patients who have a colostomy, which involves a surgical opening for bodily waste and a bag they have to manage, report an experienced well-being, a day-to-day happiness that is basically the same as healthy people.
So moment to moment, they're doing fine.
They cope. They adapt. They get used to the routine of the bag. It doesn't ruin their breakfast or their enjoyment of a movie. Their experiencing self is, for the most part, fine. They're living a normal life.
Okay, that makes sense with everything we've said so far. But what's the contrast?
The contrast is that if you ask these same patients a question for their remembering self, like, would you be willing to trade years of your life expectancy to get rid of this colostomy? They say yes.
So even though it doesn't make their days worse, they'd still give up years of life to not have it.
Exactly. And even more telling, if you survey patients who had the procedure reversed, they remember that time in their life as awful.
Wait, hold on. So day to day, they reported being fine, but looking back, they remember it as being awful. How can both be true?
This is the paradox. The remembering self, the one that tells the story of your life, hates the condition. It focuses on the disability because that's the headline. That's the major plot twist in their life story. But the experiencing self, the one actually living through a Tuesday afternoon, just deals with it and moves on.
This feels like it's getting into a massive philosophical problem. Which you should we care about more? The you that actually feels the joy of a sunny morning, or the you that looks back 20 years from now and evaluates the story of your life?
And the source author admits that this is where his own thinking on well-being had to evolve. Initially, many in the field thought, well, if the moment-to-moment experience is good, then you're happy. End of story.
The hedonimeter view.
The hedonimeter view. Just sum up the good and bad moments. You can't just ignore the story. You can't ignore what people want for themselves, what goals they set.
And this brings us directly to goals. Because it turns out that what you want when you're 18 years old can actually predict how you feel about your life when you're 40.
This is from the 1976 Elite Student Study, a massive data set. They surveyed over 12,000 freshmen at elite colleges. And among many other questions, they asked them how important it was to be very well off financially.
A straightforward ambition check. Do you want to be rich? Yes or no?
Pretty much. Then they came back and found these same people almost 20 years later in 1995. They looked at their actual income and they asked them about their current life satisfaction.
I think I can guess the headline here. The old cliche, money buys happiness.
It's more complicated and more interesting than that. The real headline is, getting what you wanted buys satisfaction.
Okay, break that down for me.
The students who, at age 18, said money was essential or very important, and then actually went on to have high incomes, they were significantly happier than average.
Goal achieved, victory lap, makes sense.
But the students who said money was essential and then ended up with low incomes, they were significantly more dissatisfied than average. Their happiness was way below the baseline.
So ambition is a real double-edged sword. If you succeed, you get a big bonus. If you fail, you get a big penalty.
A huge penalty. And here is the kicker. What about the students who, at age 18, said money was not important at all?
The young idealists.
The idealists. Well, 20 years later, even if they had low incomes, they were relatively happy. Their life satisfaction was perfectly average. They were much, much happier than the poor, ambitious people.
Because there was no gap between their goals and their reality. They didn't want it, they didn't get it, and they were fine with that.
Exactly. So the worst case scenario for your life satisfaction is to want something badly and then not get it. The source literally calls it a recipe for dissatisfaction.
What other goals did they look at?
They explicitly mention one, becoming accomplished in a performing art.
Ouch. As a failed garage band guitarist from my teenage years, I feel personally attacked by this data.
Well, the source says that measured by life satisfaction 20 years later, it is statistically the least promising goal a young person can have.
Why? Because the odds of making it are so astronomically low.
Precisely. The gap between the teenage dream of being a rock star and the adult reality of working a day job is, for most, a giant chasm. And that unfulfilled goal stays with you. It colors the evaluation of your life story.
So your remembering self looks back and sees failure even if your experiencing self is having a perfectly fine day-to-day life.
And this is why the author ultimately argues for what he calls a hybrid view of well-being. You can't just measure happiness with the hedonimeter, the simple sum of happy moments. You also have to measure life satisfaction. Did I achieve the things that were important to me?
It's the difference between asking, did I have fun at the party? And was it a good party?
That's a great way to put it. You might have had fun moment to moment talking to one person in the corner, but if the party was to celebrate your rival getting a promotion you wanted, the overall story of the event is a painful one.
Or the opposite, right? You might run a marathon. The moment-to-moment experience is pure agony for 3 hours. Your experiencing self is miserable.
Miserable. It's just pain.
But the story your remembering self tells for the rest of your life is one of triumph and accomplishment.
And that's why we do hard things. We need both. We need pleasant experiences, but we also need a narrative that makes sense to us. A story where we are the hero, even if the filming process is miserable sometimes.
But the danger, and this seems to be the core lesson here, is letting that narrative completely override the experience. That is the danger of the focusing illusion.
Yes. We often sacrifice years of pleasant daily experiences for a story of success, like the prestigious, high-stress job that doesn't actually make our Tuesdays any better. We buy the big house for the story, but the experience is just more cleaning and a bigger mortgage payment.
So, to bring this all back to where we started, we are terrible forecasters because we are obsessed with the moment of change and completely blind to the steady state that follows.
We focus on the wedding day, not the 10,000th day of marriage. We focus on moving day, not the mundane reality of residency. We focus on the moment of purchase, not the lifetime of possession.
And we forget that attention is a finite resource. It always eventually withdraws.
It always withdraws. That is the fundamental rule of hedonic adaptation. Unless there is chronic pain or constant noise or active, effortful engagement, the brain just stops noticing.
So what's the actionable advice here? Let's make this practical. If I'm standing at a crossroads in my life trying to decide what will actually make me happy, what question should I ask myself?
The first step is to stop asking, will this make me happy?
Why? That seems like the most important question.
Because that question immediately triggers the focusing illusion. Your brain will automatically show you the highlight reel. If you ask, will moving to California make me happy? You'll see the beach. You won't see the traffic.
Okay, so what should I ask instead?
A much better question is, how much of my active attention will this object or situation command in 6 months' time?
Ah, that shifts the perspective immediately. It forces you to think about the Tuesday morning reality, not the Saturday fantasy.
It does. If the answer is, I will use it every day, and I will have to focus and engage with it to use it, like learning the cello, or joining the book club, or taking a job that genuinely challenges you intellectually, then yes, it has a good chance of sustaining your well-being.
Because it keeps demanding your attention.
Right. But if the answer is, well, I will just sit in it, or I will just look at it, like the fancy car or the great view from the new house, then you are almost certainly overestimating how much joy it's actually going to bring you.
So the mantra should be, focus on the flow, not on the status.
Precisely. Invest your time and money in experiences that demand your engagement, because you can't fully adapt to something that keeps changing and challenging you and requiring you to be present.
And maybe, just maybe, cut yourself some slack on the long-term predictions.
I'm sorry.
You're going to be wrong. Everyone is.
You will be. But knowing why you're wrong, knowing that your brain is a substitution machine that's obsessed with what's right in front of it, That knowledge might just save you from making that one big expensive mistake, or at the very least, it will help you understand why the new car didn't actually change your life.
It's just a car, and you've only got 10 toes.
Indeed, it's all just background scenery eventually.
I want to leave our listeners with a final thought to chew on, something that builds on this. We've talked all this time about the hedonimeter, measuring a life by the sum of its happy moments, versus the biography, the story we tell about our life.
The experiencing self versus the remembering self. The moment versus the memory.
Exactly. So here's a final question for you to consider. If you could have one of two lives, which would you choose? Life A is moment-to-moment pure bliss, filled with simple pleasures, but you would remember almost none of it. Your biography would be blank. Or Life B, which is a constant moment-to-moment struggle full of sacrifice and difficulty, but you would look back on it as a heroic, meaningful, triumphant story. Which one would you actually choose? Are you living for the experience, or are you living for the biography?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it? And I suspect the answer tells you more about who you are than any happiness survey ever could.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. Check your heuristics, watch where your attention goes, and we'll see you next time.